I've been a VR guy since about 2017, and over that time, I've seen a lot of things come and go.
You know OLED screens? The ones that people are clamoring all over the beyond for? We used to have that.
Oculus DK2, Rift, Quest 1, OG Vive, Vive Pro, and Pro I, PSVR 1,
OLED. And when basically every headset manufacturer agreed that LCD was the way to go for a little while, like an entire generation of headsets, hardly anybody said anything about it. It's weird.
And it got me thinking, what headsets and other VR hardware managed to make it into the discontinued bit? Let's start with one of the weirdest ones.
This is the Deca Move. Some of you might remember it, others might not.
This little guy used to clip on your belt, and it was a pretty cool little thing. For 60 bucks, you could get hip-based movement in VR.
In some games, you move based on where your head is pointed, and in others, you move where your dominant hand is pointed. And for a lot of people, that just feels kind of weird, and it might make them motion sick.
Deca Move was supposed to be the $60 fix for this. Instead of head or hand-based movement, the direction you move in would be based on your hip. You know, how people move around in the real world. It's kind of nifty, and it was pretty cheap.
To call this thing discontinued would be a bit of an understatement. I couldn't find anything from Deca themselves saying that it was discontinued, but based on the fact that their entire website is inaccessible and their other project, an entire VR headset, being shit-canned, I'd say it's gone.
If this is something that you're really interested in, you can just use your phone for it nowadays. Maybe get one of those dad phone holsters to complete the look.
This next one though, that one was kind of a surprise.
Let me give you a little backstory. In 2021, Vive came out with this little guy. It's a face tracker, and it was meant to be slapped onto Vive's Pro series of headsets that are honestly a little bit poo-poo dog water, but don't worry, we'll be talking about those too.
And lately, face tracking has become kind of a trend. I got it, the majority of people that I hang out with have it in one form or another. It was kind of weird for it to get axed.
More and more people are getting their hands on face tracking, and as goofy as it sounds, it really changes the experience in games like VR chat. So much so that I don't think I could ever go without it again.
But their face tracker had problems. In typical Vive fashion, the software was pure garbage and the hardware was super temperamental. But their face tracker did fill a gap.
If someone is looking at getting face tracking, the Quest Pro is hands down the best option right now in terms of convenience. The Vive face tracker hangs in front of your face, blocking you from drinking comfortably, and God forbid one of your friends says something really funny and you spit vodka all over it. Oh, and you could kill it just by unplugging it.
But what if you want face tracking without selling your soul to Zuck? The Vive face tracker was really the only option for a built-to-purpose face tracker that you could mod onto any headset. Rest in peace, my short-lived and awful king.
Speaking of Vive, let's talk about all of the headsets that they have discontinued.
Now, this kind of feels like a cheap shot, but for the sake of nostalgia, there's some memories here.
The OG Vive. They built this with Valve and it shows, in like a really good way. Valve carried the group project. These things are basically bulletproof. The only real weakness is the cable, but instead of a proprietary 80 million pin cable, this old tough guy just used full-size connectors for everything. It's pretty neat, and you can get them really cheap now. I got 2 of these things just in case a nuclear war happens and I need a backup for my backup.
Then it was followed up by the Pro series, the Vive Pro and the Pro I. Basically the same headset, but the Pro I includes eye tracking. Duh.
The Vive Pro, I never owned one, but as far as I can tell, it was pretty alright. Actually, really good for the time. Same resolution as the Index, not too far off the price point either, with OLED too. You could do the Gear VR lens mod for about 25 bucks to get some really good optics out of this thing. Pretty neat deal overall if you can find one that hasn't been trashed.
The Pro I, however, uses the same software that the face tracker uses, and that stuff is already a bit of a nightmare, so I'd avoid that thing.
And then there's the Vive Focus 1 and 2. These things were doggy doo-doo poopy butt. No more to say about that. Kinda the same thing with the Vive Cosmos and Cosmos Elite.
Well, kinda, I guess. As far as I can tell, they are currently only discontinued in the US and Germany, but not really anywhere else. I have no idea. It's confusing just like every other decision that Vive has made in the last 4 years.
The Cosmos and Cosmos Elite are weird. The base version was an inside-out tracked PCVR only headset. The Cosmos Elite was a base station tracked version of the same thing. Both had one really cool feature that I really liked from the DPVR E4 and I wish we would see more of, and that's the flip-up design. Super cool and makes drinking in VR chat just a little too easy. The inside-out tracking of the base version was really bad though, like not being able to track its own controllers directly in front of it bad. Oh. And look at you, my beloved. A first generation Vive Wand. So horrible, but so perfect. These controllers are the real cockroaches of VR.
You know how Index controllers like to just go poof and stop working? Well, that ain't happening with one of these bad boys.
Stick drift? What if you just didn't have a stick? Finger tracking freaking out on your Index controllers? What finger tracking? Intruder broke in and you need to defend yourself? These things can handle a little blood.
These things are absolute units. The trackpad sucks for any kind of precision, but damn do these things last.
Vive discontinued these guys quietly at some point, I guess, in order to make way for the uglier 2.0 wands. Me no like blue plastic, give me gray. Surprisingly and thankfully, it doesn't seem like base station 1.0s will be discontinued anytime soon. Maybe. I can't tell the future, dude.
I still use base station 1.0s from the first Vive kit that I ever bought. These little dudes have been with me through thick and thin. My wedding, the birth of my son, my parents'
But you know what was discontinued and without any warning? The entirety of Oculus. To be real for a moment, Oculus was a real made in America story. Palmer Luckey, one of our favorite little guys, started building early VR HMDs in his parents' garage in Long Beach, California in about 2009. He was 17 years old.
Flash forward in 2012, he started Oculus VR itself and launched a Kickstarter campaign for the DK1.
He was looking for a cool $250K to get the project off the ground. They locked in a pretty neat and tidy $2.5 million instead. Then investors pitched in $16 million on top. And then another batch of investment runs brought in another $75 million into the company. He must have been in like his early 20s at this point.
When I was that age, I was like a year younger than I am now.
To give you an idea of just how much of an impact this guy had, there basically wasn't a consumer grade VR headset until he showed up. He is basically the entire reason that you're even watching this video right now.
Oculus's first production headset was the DK1, and it came in a really cool box. Jacksepticeye had one. Top of the morning to you laddies! And so did a bunch of other cool YouTubers.
And it kinda sucked, at least compared to what we have today. No controllers, not even 6 degrees of freedom, which means you couldn't lean your head, only tilt it. And a total resolution of 640 by 800 per eye, which is absolutely abysmal by today's standards.
But hey, it was a first generation product. DK stands for Development Kit. Plus, again, cool box.
DK2 was their next release, and it was a huge improvement.
OLED.
Along with packing a higher refresh rate, higher FOV, higher resolution, and it was 6'd off, meaning it was a little bit harder to get motion sick because it tracked every degree of freedom you've got in the real world.
No cool box, though.
Then, the Rift.
OLED.
And a higher res, finally adjustable IPD, a slightly worse FOV, oddly enough. Weird. Higher refresh rate, too.
Wabam, Rift S.
Oculus Rift S. Higher res, pass-through cameras and grayscale, but a lower refresh rate and LCD? What? This is what I was talking about.
Still no cool box. But it did have a monumentally shit microphone that sounded like something from the fiery pits of hell.
Okay, let's circle back for a second. Meta bought Oculus in 2014. Well, not Meta, but Facebook, who would end up later rebranding as Meta following a ridiculous number of congressional appearances for privacy violations.
Wow. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah, they said they wouldn't kill the Oculus name, but they did. Damn, they kind of lied to us a lot, didn't they? Straight to our faces, too.
Oh, under Meta, they released the original Quest, which had
OLED
and was really the first standalone headset of its kind. Honestly, I prefer the look of the Quest 1 over the Quest 2 for the same reason that I only wear dark colored shirts. Stains.
You know how people always make the joke that's like, imagine buying a motorcycle from a flute company, ha ha ha, Yamaha, am I right?
Time to ask a question that none of you have ever asked. What if a printer company made a VR headset?
Actually, not as bad as you would think. Kind of an industry leader in a lot of ways.
This is the HP Reverb, and it was released in 2019. A really cool design with fabric on the outside of the headset. It's just really pretty. It had a higher resolution than the Index, it was base station free PCVR, and it had an IPD adjustment between 60 and 63 millimeters. Actually, that's like the worst IPD adjustment range I've ever heard of.
Before you ask, no OLED.
Then they refreshed it the next year with a pretty boring update in the Reverb G2. No cool fabric, come on dude.
And a higher FOV, wider IPD adjustment range, which is a whole 60 to 68 millimeters. Wow, that's really not that much improvement there, damn.
But the inside-out tracking was fixed up to be a little bit better. The really cool one though, the Reverb Omnicept. It's just a Reverb G2, but with full face tracking and eye tracking built in, as well as a heart rate monitor for some reason. It was pretty unique, especially at this time.
There are only 2 other headsets that still include full face and eye tracking to this day, and the Omnicept predates them by a full year.
Alright, I'm gonna be really brief about this because I don't like them. Pimax.
Okay, they discontinued the 4K, the 5K, and the 5K XR, and every single version that they had of those.
What the heck is a DMAS?
Hopefully they axe those sword controllers next because they are an unholy union between a pair of Vive Wands and an Index controller, and not a single person likes them. Please pick one, struggle Pimax.
Alright gamers, it is time. Vario, The boys from Finland are no longer making the Aero.
I know I made an entire video quite literally telling people to stay away from this thing, but to be honest, I've really been enjoying my time with it. Kinda.
For one,
Still no cool box.
and
No OLED.
And the thing works about 50% of the time and keeps disconnecting and reconnecting, but usually a reboot will fix it. The visual quality though, it's so good. I really wish Vario had put the right effort into making a consumer-grade headset that worked reliably. Everything about the Aero just tends to feel a bit clunky.
To be honest, it's a pretty rough experience for $2,000. They dropped the price in half a few months ago, a few weeks after I bought mine, and now it's dead.
A huge thank you to CDO Gran and Yumi for joining the Patreon. I appreciate all your guys' support, and I hope to bring you videos more consistently. Enjoy your day, homies.